There's a reason that we live so far from Hollywood, in the country looking hard to find a home, with nothing perfect or considered, but we're so damn good. It's the story of your life, you're moving down the page.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live back inside the Beltway on May 10th. In the year of our Lord 2022, I am Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening this morning. I'm broken. I'm a broken man, but I'm recovering. I spent, as those of you who listened to Friday, I drove down to my daughter's house. My son-in-law has been dispatched somewhere by the Navy, and it was Mother's Day, and I thought I would fill in. The Fetching Mrs. Hewitt is about to descend there for a couple of weeks when baby number 4 arrives. But so my very pregnant daughter and her 3 wonderful children, the Scholar, the Artful Dodger, and Genghis Kate, I thought I would help out. And I'm a broken man. Genghis Kate, first of all, I tried to explain to the 3-year-old that private property undergirds all of Western civilization. That's Kate, is basically what she says about everything. That's Kate's this, that's Kate's that. But I ended up, because it rained like Noah for Saturday evening and Sunday, so we never left the house. Thank God for DoorDash, right? And Mother's Day was not really Mother's Day. Plan a nice outing and you end up eating Shake Shack that's delivered to the door because you can't get out of the door. But Kate had a runny nose that could have put out every forest fire in America, and so most of the time we just sat there and read Elmo and Cookie Monster. I can actually recite those from memory now. They're scalded in there, but to a 3-year-old, everything is new. So the Scholar was busy running for 4th grade office, which required speeches and posters. The Artful Dodger was just around being mischievous, though he got 2 hits and 4 at-bats and made a stunning play at first base, if I may say so myself. Got to see that before the Rains came. So I'm a broken man. I'm so glad to be back doing the news this morning. Let's get to it. Love those grandchildren. Love waving goodbye to those grandchildren. Love arriving and I love leaving, and in between I love reading Elmo 30 times. Global stocks, according to the Financial Times, suffered their worst day since June 2020 amid slowdown fears. Stocks slide the lowest in 2020 as rout continues, says the Wall Street Journal. All right, Fed warns sharp rise in interest rates pose risk to U.S. economy. Bitcoin falls 55% from its high, according to the Wall Street Journal. What's this all mean? Well, it means exactly what I told you 2 months ago. We are headed for stagflation, with inflation and a recession at the same time. It's a replay of the Carter presidency. It's a replay of the aftermath of the Carter presidency, all kind of compressed. I think the rebound from the Carter presidency into the next Republican president will be very, very quick come 2025. But we're stuck because Joe Biden's reflex, let's spend more money. That will not work. In fact, you got to drain the money out of the system. There is no scientific way to do this. You have to use a bludgeon. You have to use a hammer on interest rates to drive out inflation. And that means your credit cards, pay off your debt if you can. Buy your house now because the 30-year fix is going to go up, up, and up. And since I'm talking about the economy, let me do my market check brought to you by Birch Gold. And get some gold. Do that at hughgold.com. Put it in your safety deposit box and realize if the end of the world ever comes and the meteor arrives, it's not going to be easy to get the Fed funds to liquidate. And so, set up some gold in the safety deposit box. Or move part of it, if you don't like markets going up and down like this, and you got to get a stomach for this if you're going to be an investor. But I do believe in 5 to 10% of your retirement being in silver or gold. I prefer gold. I believe in buying Maple Leafs and Krugerrands and American Eagles. I do not believe in nuministics or collectibles or certifiable coins or whatever they call it. That's all nonsense. Birch Gold sells you gold. And you can get to them by texting my name, Hugh, to 484848 or going to hughgold.com. Gold today is at 1,862. Up. Yesterday, everything was down. It went up. So gold is usually the inverse of market route. West Texas crude is at 103, 102.59. Brent crude is at 105. Now, overseas this morning, I want to give you a little bit of good news in here. Overseas, the rebound has begun. All right, so England is up 0.5%, Germany is up 1.33%, and France is up 0.92%. And I don't tell you where the markets are when I talk to you in the morning because it'll be different by the time I finish the sentence. And so that's kind of stupid. But I will tell you this. Don't panic. Don't sell a thing when a rout is on. Never. It always rebounds. Over 10 years, the S&P dollar cost average income. Don't gamble over at Robinhood. Don't buy Bitcoin. Be a smart person. Put away the same amount of money into a market indexed fund. Buy the S&P if you're a young person. Just buy it every month, $100, $200, whatever. Max out on your 401k. You'll be fine. Really, you will be. Work. Go get a job. Get a 401k. Say, I'll take the max. Whatever the max 401k is, withdraw it on your first paycheck so you never know that it's gone. This is Hugh Hewitt Economics. They had to teach this every day in school and somehow make it interesting. And then you'll be able to have, as I do, enough to buy off the Artful Dodger. Between double relief factors and the Artful Dodger's pillow, which I borrowed, my neck is good for the first time in like 2 months. And I did double up on the relief factor, and I did, he has a 1-inch pillow. And it's like God descended from heaven and fixed my neck. More on that later. Meanwhile, so I bought his pillow for $20. The Artful Dodger, of course, being the Artful Dodger, said, you can't have my pillow. And so we negotiated. And the scholar, being the scholar, said, oh, that's not equitable. She's in a CRT influence school, obviously. And I said, well, okay, here's $20 for you, too. And I was out the door. Kate wanted both of those because she doesn't believe in property that belongs to other than Kate. She's bound for royalty. Meanwhile, there is continuing electricity shortage warnage growing across the United States. Power grid operators caution the electricity supplies aren't keeping up with demand. What a surprise! What do you know? In California, hey, Dwayne, are the lights on there? Just checking. To the studio.
Well, for now.
For now, okay. It's California. We're never sure. It's Gavin Newsom in California, but apparently solar power isn't reliable. How about that? Isn't that amazing? Solar power just doesn't do the job.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who'd have thought that? Sometimes it's cloudy. And the tidal power, that's great if you're right next to the ocean. Low-wage earners to get high-speed internet for $30 each per month in Biden program. Buying more votes as November looms and the Democrats are going to get crushed because this is a disaster. Inflation, recession, and the unemployed who won't come back to work because they're used to the dole. Low-wage earners to get high-speed. Now, by the way, some people won't go back because they still have uncertainty about their schools introduced by recent experience over 2 years. And they don't want to go back to work only to have to scramble to find childcare that isn't there. I heard a lot about this at the Little League. You learn more about a country at a Little League game because these are engaged parents. This is where all of the national news should go. What's going on in the country? Go to the Little League. Now, first of all, Hewitt's rule, T-ball should be illegal. That's at the top of the next presidential debate that I moderate. What is your position on making T-ball illegal? Now, I like Little League. I like machine pitch Little League. That's what the Artful Dodger is playing. That's actually baseball. T-ball is torture for parents. But if you go to a field where there's, mid-league 5 to 6, 5th to 6th graders and Little League 2nd and 3rd graders, not only do you see the world's most engaged parents, not only do you see the diversity of America, you also talk to parents about everything, right? And we know that people are now worried about travel team costs, and they're now worried about baseballs that go over the fence and they run for them. They worry about everything because there isn't any extra money because of inflation. So here is low-wage earners to get high-speed internet for $30 a month. Okay, where did that come from? I thought, where did they get the money? You just can't, wave them at. They took it out of the infrastructure bill. Now, if anyone out there thought subsidies for poor people, which may or may not be a good thing, all right, I'm not debating whether or not poor people need the internet. They do. But if you thought subsidies for people making under twice the poverty level, which is about, I think, $60,000 a year, maybe it's $70,000 a year, So if you make less than $70,000 a year, you get internet for $30 a month. If you thought that was infrastructure, raise your hand. I kind of thought infrastructure with bridges and roads and ports, right? I just sort of thought that because I'm just from Ohio, and infrastructure in there means replace those bridges which are going to fall down. And that's what we thought it was. But to Joe Biden, it meant the ability to write checks to everyone who doesn't have internet or wants to lower their internet costs and turn out to vote. I think those checks will come with them. Don't forget to vote in November. More coming up after the break, America. Don't go anywhere. I got a lot of audio. I've been up all night working on the audio. Don't go anywhere. Thanks to Ed Morrissey, by the way. The effortless Ed, we call him, was in yesterday because he makes it look effortless. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you make the internet safe, then you make the system safer for everyone. Big tech puts black people, black is of course capitalized, people of color, I'm shocked that that's not capitalized, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else. Really? Big tech puts black people. So big tech, which allows constantly for the degradation of people with white skin, but they're putting black people, people of color, that's obviously non-black, non-whites, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
They're not objective. Edward R. Murrow ought to be rolling in his grave. Now, let me just ask you flat out, and I really want to get your honest assessment of this. Are you comfortable and are you glad that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Congress? Or are you like my friend Mark Davis, who sort of wishes that people like MTG would sort of pump the brakes a little bit on the rhetoric, on the over-the-top, in-your-face, persona? I just think we need more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and less Mitt Romneys. I think we need fighters if we're going to have a chance.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real? Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back. This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The sun is coming up, America, or it's up already, wherever you live. I don't know where you live. And I want to tell you, get going. It's a wonderful Tuesday in America, except for Mark Esper, whose book has hit with a thud. The former Secretary of Defense was on Bret Baier last night trying to gin up interest. He gave his first interview to Bret, which is smart. Bret's got the biggest audience among book buyers in America. I do believe that. I believe people who are thoughtful. It's the national news now. It is the evening news for people who are smart. And so Bret invites the former SecDef on and asks them the obvious question, cut number 14.
Why didn't you quit? Because I thought that quitting would result in my immediate dismissal, which would be a fair thing for the president to do, and I would not be there
for a second
to help shape policy.
Why didn't I quit? Because I thought quitting would result in my immediate dismissal. Dwayne, if you quit, do I need to fire you?
No.
Okay, did that make any sense to you?
None whatsoever.
Okay, pick up the tape.
Why didn't you quit? Because I thought that quitting would result in my immediate dismissal, which would be a fair thing for the president to do, and I would not be there to help shape policy in a favorable direction.
Wait, stop for a second. Stop for a second.
Okay, go ahead.
If he was worried about an immediate dismissal after he quit, what does he think quitting actually looks like?
I don't know.
How long does he think he gets to stay in the job after quitting?
I don't know. Remember Lou Bob Lemon? We fired him repeatedly. And Billy Martin got fired repeatedly. Maybe he thinks Trump is like Steinbrenner, that he fires you and brings you back. But that actually never happened.
It really doesn't. Not in that kind of a gig.
No. Okay. So I got to forget the rest of Esper. It was he stumbled and bumbled his way through this interview, and his publisher was no doubt watching this with their hearts sinking, because they've been throwing out little bits of chum to get all the papers, Why didn't you shoot him in the legs? Here's the president's statement, former president yesterday. Nora, this must be going to Nora O'Donnell. Nora, as per your request on Esper, that's what he calls former Secretary of Esper, in quotes, see you soon. Question, during a June 1, 2020 meeting at the White House cabinet, debating what to do about protest and civil unrest, Mark Esper says President Trump wanted to shoot some of the protesters in the leg. A lot of foul language was used, and accused President Trump of calling members of the cabinet effing losers. This is a complete lie, and 10 witnesses can back it up, the president responds. Mark Esper was weak and totally ineffective, and because of it, I had to run the military. I took out ISIS, Qasem Soleimani, al-Baghdadi, rebuilt the military with $2.5 trillion, recreated Space Force, and much more. Mark Esper was a stiff who was desperate not to lose his job. He would do anything I wanted. That's why I called him Esper. He was a lightweight and figurehead, and I realized it very early on. He was recommended to me by very weak rhinos, and that is what he turned out to be. Question: President Trump wanted to send 10,000 active duty troops into Washington, D.C. after St. John's Church was set on fire. Wrong. I wanted to send at least 10,000 troops for January 6th. Because I knew many people were coming to Washington that day to protest the corrupt presidential election of 2020. Nancy Pelosi and the D.C. mayor turned me down. 60 Minutes should ask them why they chose not to have proper security, which would have totally changed the day and allowed us to have a proper debate on the evidence of massive election fraud, which the fake news media still refuses to cover whatsoever. Question: later, in a meeting at the White House, President Trump contended his Secretary of Defense had taken away his authority on the Insurrection Act and didn't believe he could invoke it anymore. That is fake news. The fact is, I didn't need to invoke the act and never did. Question. Esper says Mark Meadows called him to relieve him of his post and said Esper was not sufficiently loyal and, quote, the president was not happy with you. Answer. I fired Esper because he was a rhino incapable of leading and I had to run the military myself. Question. On a couple of occasions, President Trump suggested to Esper, quote, they attacked the drug cartels with missiles, close quote. No comment. Now, I'm not going to tell you with whom I had this conversation, green room conversation. I never reveal green room conversation. And we both agreed, that doesn't sound so bad to us. They're making fentanyl, which killed 100,000 Americans last year. Anything wrong with a cruise missile strike on the labs? You give them notice and you say, you got 10 minutes, get the people out. We're blowing up the meth. Anybody got a problem with that? Mexico might, but actually they might actually like that. My friend said, I like Tom Clancy novels. The Clear and Present Danger novel, not very different from that. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, but don't buy Mark Esper's book. More on that after the break because there's an interesting detail coming up.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Those who self-describe as very liberal, 39% thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every single year. 8% thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year. Those who just described as liberal, not very liberal, half of them thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. The year they did the survey, the police killed 12. Yet half of those who are liberal in this country believe the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. No wonder they're upset. If I thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year, I'd be in the streets yelling and screaming too. My point is, they are ill-informed. They are ignorant. So part of the reason that they're so angry is because they are so completely, totally ill-informed.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake, Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans are too gutless to do. They're willing to stand up and say, we've got to fight because they don't play right. They don't play fair. They're dirty. They play dirty. And if we don't stand up, we're going to lose our country. We're losing our country. We got now we're going to get a truth ministry czar under Homeland Security. Some crazy woman. If you watch that video at Salem News Channel of her singing Mary Poppins, you think I took a camera into the mental ward and filmed one of the patients. She's got an important government position, and apparently she's going to be in a position to shut you and me up.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
There was a time, a long, long time ago, Chevys and Levis played on the radio. No cell phones, just 20,000 lights swaying on a Saturday night, alright.
Welcome back, Americans. Hugh Hewitt. I try and observe little things. Yesterday morning when Ed Morrissey was sitting in for me, I walked my second grade grandson to his bus stop, just chatting with him, and I noticed a small detail. It's a 1 through 8 year old school, and I walked the scholar is at a magnet school, and it's 2nd through 8. Walked her to the bus stop, and another student appeared, approximately 6th grade, and the first thing that student did was pull out a cell phone at the bus stop and begin looking. Now, I'm a Catholic school kid, and the bus came for me every year from 4th grade through 8th grade. I got dropped off and walked home in 1 through 3. And I thought to myself, bus stops are great places where kids learn about kids in other grades, or at least I always did. You talk to everyone at the bus stop. And instead, the cell phones came out, and I thought to myself, I wonder how many interactions are not happening. How much doesn't? And buses are now full of kids looking down at screens. It's, I'm of the opinion, none of my grandkids are old enough for, and my oldest is never going to give them cell phones, I don't think, until they're 28, if she has anything to say about it, and my son-in-law as well. So I just wonder, it's just about buses and school buses, all the stuff that used to go on, good, bad, and indifferent, safety patrol, all that stuff, all gone. Faces and cell phones. Not a good thing. All right, now memoirs. Mark Esper. I just want to finish with this. I have in front of me, I keep in my various studios around the country. I've got one on the western border, one on the northern border, and this is the southern border. It's in the Beltway. And eastern border. And I haven't established a southern command like Rush had in Florida yet, the free state of Florida. I asked Governor DeSantis if I can establish a studio in the south so I can have north, south, east, and west covered. I patrol the borders of the country doing my job in the civilian defense. So I keep various memoirs everywhere around the country. And I love memoirs. I usually just inhale memoirs. And I think if you ask General James Mattis, if you ask General Stanley McChrystal, any of the military members that I've done, they'll say, Hewitt was among the best, if not the best interview. I won't quote anyone complimenting me, even though I remember them all. I have here Sacred Duty by Tom Cotton. Now, this is not classically a memoir, though Cotton talked about his time in the 101st Airborne, but he talked about his time in the Old Guard at Arlington. And Sacred Duty is, by the way, a terrific, terrific book that you ought to get every single time you get a book. Sacred Duty. I have here One Damn Thing After Another, Bill Barr. This, by the way, is the best memoir of a cabinet secretary I have ever read. Without fail, because he was AG twice in very different times. And it's funny and it's winsome. I'm having lunch today with one of his former assistant attorney generals. And I just can't wait to talk about Bill Barr, who I've only met once and have talked to 3 times. 2 interviews on the air, one about this book. And I can say candidly, AG Barr thinks I knew my stuff because I read the books. Most interviewers don't read the book. Here's James Clapper, not our favorite person, right? James Clapper. We did 2 hours on his memoir. He loved it. I'd read it. Okay, I am the only man in America. I'm the only person in America. I don't care what your pronoun is. I believe I'm the only person in America who, this discounts people who were paid to do so, who read every page of Every Day is Extra, John Kerry's memoir. Every single page, and talked to him about it for 2 hours, at which at the end he said, that was a very good, that was fine. You read the book, obviously. I said, yes, it was. We had a great conversation. Hillary Clinton, what happened? 2 hours with Hillary Clinton on what happened. I do memoirs. I do memoirs of nonpartisan people like the generals, of Republicans like Bill Barr and Tom Cotton, of Democrats like Clapper and Senator Kerry and Secretary Clinton. Because memoirs can tell you a lot if they're honest. But to do a good memoir interview, they've got to send you the book a month in advance of publication. Because to make any difference at all, you got to do the interview within a week of publication. Radio talk show hosts on the center right are not usually the first destination for an interview. They're usually third or fourth after TV. But I don't mind that. I'm better than anyone else, and so I can do it better than anyone else. I did not get a galley or a reader's copy of Mark Esper's book. I never got a book. Sometimes they ask for a non-disclosure agreement. I won't sign those. I just tell the people approach me and say, look, you either trust me and I'll do it. I've got a record. I've been doing this for 30 years and everybody trusts me because I don't tell people what's in books. And I don't break embargoes. And if you want me to read your book, you've got to send it to me with at least a week per 100 pages of book. That's my rule. So if you have a 500-page book, I need 5 weeks because I'm going to walk you through it. I did not get a copy of Mark Esper's book. I will never read it. Why? He was afraid of a good interview. Why? Because without fear or fair, balance, unafraid, Brett, by the way, did a great interview. Part 2 is coming on tonight. I'm not sure I can watch Part 2 of Esper because there are some very despicable things in there. Very despicable things. He gave the Iranian Quds Force a target list, for example. And I can't believe that got out of the Pentagon. I'm really shocked. General Milley, if you're listening to me, how did you clear that? Because it's not true, it's not correct, but it's also wildly incendiary to the Quds Force, which we already know is trying to kill Americans. So I don't know. If Esper sent me the book, I would have read it. I would have had him on. I would have spent 2 hours. We would have gone through, and he would have sold books if he was good. He's just not very good. I only talked to the guy twice. I've never met him. He called me up twice. Both times after I criticized the Department of Defense under Trump for not moving towards the 355-ship Navy that the Commander-in-Chief had twice ordered them to come up with. And got just nonsense pablum. Of course, the Navy is smaller than before Trump got in because of Esper and successive SecNavs who didn't know what they were doing. I actually think the Secretary of the Navy under Joe Biden is the best Secretary of the Navy we've had in 10 years. And I am hopeful that he actually gets a ship plan underway. We are learning from the Ukraine war, by the way, that your ships had better have a lot of missile defense on them. The carriers do. I'm not saying we're in the post-carrier era because we have a lot of anti-missile defenses on our carriers. I'm not so sure about other ships, older ships. And I'm not sure that it really matters because if they hit our carriers, if the Chinese hit our carriers in a first strike, we got the boomers under the water. But I am real sure we better get the Columbia class in the water in a hurry, and because that's our deterrent now. China's going to have these hypersonics, and they're going to be able to go anywhere and hit any target, including, we're not going to go back to the MX. If any of you are old enough to remember the MX, that was the missile on a railroad. It's not going to be fast enough to beat a hypersonic. They're going to have to be under the sea. Our triad is going to be, yeah, we might still have a triad. I don't know how we're going to disguise, or maybe you put a retractable barrier above them. I don't know. I leave it up to the people in DARPA. All I know is we need the Columbia class in the water. Number one thing in the world to deter China from a hypersonic strike, because they could send a legion of missiles at all of our carriers, and I don't know if they would survive. But I do know this. Mark Esper's book isn't going to survive a week. It's not going to make the New York Times. No one's going to read it. And I'll tell you why. Because he's not interesting. It is not, I think the former president's answers are dispositive on this. It is not, it is not a profile in courage not to send your book to the best interviewers who will spend time. Oh, I forgot to turn on the lights around my set today. Hold on a second. I prefer that if you're watching on the Salem News Channel, you could have seen all those books I held up, and you would have seen that. If you haven't got the Salem News Channel app downloaded yet. Have you watched 2,000 Mules yet, by the way? That's Dinesh D'Souza's new movie. It's also over at salemnow.com. I don't want to forget to do my plugs here. Now I want to go to the president, because the president gave a White House internet speech yesterday announcing his giveaway to people that's in the infrastructure bill somehow. Somehow there was a pot of money he could dip into. Cut number 6.
The bottom line is this. My top priority is fighting inflation and lowering prices for families and things they need. Today's announcement is going to give millions of families a little more breathing room to help them pay their bills. You know, we work with Democrats and Republicans and business and nonprofits to make this happen. And we're going to keep working to fight inflation and lower costs to all American families for a lot of other things as well.
I'm reshelving my books there because I've heard this. How many of you think he's going to keep fighting? To me, what you got to understand, he's announcing spending $30 billion of new spending, $14 billion of new spending, and talking about fighting inflation. One of those things just doesn't belong there. One of those things just isn't the same. Okay, then cut number 7.
So God bless you all, and may God protect you and all the members of Congress who made this happy. I was going to name each one of you, and I was told don't, because people who aren't here wanted to be here. But I think I should name you anyway, shouldn't I? I mean, no? Well, I don't know, man. Anyway, we're all in the front row here.
It made this happy. I made this happy. Look, people misspeak all the time. All the time. I misspeak every couple of years. I'll mispronounce a name. Is that right, Dwayne? Do you think it's every couple of years? And so I'm not going to say.
Who's that Archbishop in Philly you like?
Archbishop Charles.
Yeah, him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. He is the most patient man. He's going to heaven right away. No purgatory for Archbishop Charles Chaput.
Do not pass. Right. He goes straight to go.
Yeah, because he's had to endure the trial of my attempting to get a French name right, which is a little bit. It's not Pierre, so if it was Charles Pierre, I could have done it every single time. Let me play for you Chuck Schumer on CNN yesterday, because I look forward to this vote. Cut number 9.
This is no longer an abstract exercise. This is the real deal, and everyone's eyes are on them. So we can always hope, and we must have this vote. Every senator must show where he or she stands.
I agree. They're going to vote on an abortion bill that will federalize abortion, say it is legal everywhere and at all times for anyone who sets up a clinic, up to 8 months and 29 days, or indeed during delivery, a woman can change her mind about the baby within her, and that baby's life will be over. And if you vote yes on that, you're a radical, an absolute radical. A super majority of Americans believe unreasonable restrictions on abortion. It's that simple. A supermajority of Americans believe in reasonable restrictions on abortion. Take that to the bank, and that's the end. And it's a federal question. That is probably an unconstitutional act anyway. Okay, relieffactor.com. You heard me complaining all last. I never complain about aches and pains on this show because I don't have them. But then the neck went crazy. I doubled down on Relief Factor. I also got a new pillow, a miracle pillow, the one I paid the Artful Dodger $20 for, and I just brought it home with me. I carry in curcumin and resveratrol omega. There it is. I take it every morning. Last week I was taking double the amount because I really could not move my neck. Made an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon, the orthopedic surgeon to the fighter pilots inside the Beltway. I'm still going to go see the doctor because maybe it'll come back. Maybe there's something wrong. I don't know. But today, look at me. If you're watching, I'm fine. First time in like 2 weeks I can move my neck. And it started on Saturday morning after I slept on the Artful Dodger's pillow. Coming right back with Drucker. I want to talk about Pennsylvania. I've endorsed David McCormick in Pennsylvania. I'm going to talk to him about that. Mike Pompeo and Ted Cruz can't be wrong. Go out and vote for David McCormick early, get it done, and I'll talk to Drucker next.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy. This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Also sending to Congress a comprehensive package that will enhance our underlying effort to accommodate the Russian oligarchs and make sure we take their ill-begotten gains. We're going to accommodate them. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy. Kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
Whoa. That's the President of the United States. That's the guy, I guarantee you, some people listening pull the lever for. You happy now? You happy where you got us?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, David M. Drucker. You see him on TV. You read him in the Washington Examiner. He is on with me every week. Good morning, David. How are you?
I'm great, Hugh. Good morning.
I rarely endorse in Senate races. I didn't in Ohio. I knew everyone. I will eventually in Missouri because Eric Greitens simply cannot be allowed to win. He will lose that seat, and he's a bad guy, in my opinion. But in Pennsylvania, I've held back. But now Mike Pompeo, Ted Cruz, I actually made up my mind after Secretary Pompeo endorsed David McCormick. I'm endorsing David McCormick on the off chance that there's a listener somewhere that would vote based upon my recommendation. David McCormick ought to be it. But that race is whisper thin. I mean, it's and there are three people, Kathy Barnett, Dr. Oz, and David McCormick. What do you see happening in Pennsylvania?
Well, this is going to be a fascinating race. It's the first time I've seen from a Republican grassroots and from an establishment level a sort of rejection of a Trump endorsement outright in Pennsylvania. Now, it's close, which means it hasn't been a wholesale rejection among the voters, and there are, and Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz does have some level of grassroots support and establishment support in Pennsylvania. But after Trump made the endorsement, if you talked to activists in Pennsylvania, you talked to some levels of the establishment, and a lot of Trump supporters, they were kind of mystified and unhappy about the whole thing and just vowed not to go along with it.
All right,
so
David, here's my assessment. I've said this privately. I'll say it publicly now. I haven't seen anyone else say it. Dr. Oz is former President Trump's Harriet Miers.
Well, maybe not. I don't know that...
Swing and a miss, David. Swing and a miss.
Listen, yes, but I think the reason I don't like the analogy, Hugh, is because Harriet Miers caused President Bush at the time a whole lot of problems. And he was forced to pull her back and replace her, appoint a new nominee, come up with
Justice
a new nominee.
Alito.
Because it was impacting his own relationship with the grassroots and with voters. I have not seen, and Trump is on track potentially to lose the Pennsylvania Senate race in terms of his endorsement, lose the Georgia governor's race in terms of his endorsement, and possibly this evening lose the Nebraska governor's race with his endorsement in terms of his endorsed candidate losing.
But he won Ohio. He won Ohio.
But he won Ohio. But my point is, in these states where his endorsed candidate is about to be rejected and there's been some annoyance, I have not seen a one-to-one correlation with that means that they have a problem with him. A lot of what we are seeing here is, I just don't like the endorsement, but I still like him. And
Well, that, by the way, I was a big Harriet Miers supporter, because I think I was thinking politically, if this is withdrawn, Bush will be injured. And that was the horrible year, 2005. He lost Social Security. Iraq went bad. It was the young lady in Florida was dying, and they called the Congress back. I mean, everything that could go wrong went wrong in 2005, and it ended by nominating and withdrawing Harriet Miers. And I liked Counsel to the President Miers. I thought she'd be a fine Supreme Court justice, but the base rebelled. That's my point, is that the base was not persuaded.
Yes, correct. But I always like to point out, because I've been studying this, that the base is rebelling against his decision or decisions, let's say, if we look at multiple races here. And I think it will impact how other elected Republicans relate to Trump. I think he loses some of these big endorsements, and at the very least, there are going to be a lot of elected Republicans that often walk on eggshells around him that are going to be more bold in how they deal with him, their willingness to oppose him when they want to oppose him.
Do you think
But
he
his
might
relationship
be
with
more
voters
cautious?
is still solid.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Donald Trump is still the odds-on favorite to be the nominee of the Republican Party if he runs. However, the more that you endorse and don't win, the likelier it is that the field will be more than Larry Hogan and Chris Christie.
And that's what I'm getting at, and you took the words right out of my mouth. Things like this embolden other Republicans who begin to believe, I can oppose Donald Trump, maybe win, but definitely not be shunned by Republican voters in the grassroots. The fear of Trump, as you know, but not everybody seems to know, has always been about his relationship with voters, not about him. And when I have to answer questions to people that say, why are they so scared of Trump? I said, they're not scared of Trump. They're scared of their own voters. They don't want to be out of line with their own voters.
May I suggest a different word? Not scared. They are respectful of their base.
Well, they're respectful. They're also scared.
we disagree. So, David, you got a prediction in Pennsylvania? Am I going to move 1 or 2 voters, and is McCormick going to win?
I think you'll maybe pick up 1 or 2 fans. You'll go, oh, look, Hugh agrees with me on this, so he's not so bad after all. Look,
there you go. That's how radio actually works. Never overestimate. Unless you're Rush Limbaugh, the late, great Rush Limbaugh, you don't actually move the needle, friends. You don't.
Well,
to the world of broadcast.
Writing. I'll get these emails going, oh, I didn't. You're not so dumb after all. You're all right.
David M. Drucker on Twitter. Thank you, my friend. Go nowhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Curious about what you're missing in the Hughiverse? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.hughiverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.hughiverse.com.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and 3rd grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermano. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
And Shapiro or I mean, I could, the whole list or.
Because then you don't have the caricatured version of conservatives.
That's right. Yes, exactly. It's shattering.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. So you were with police, and by the way, I was going to add Dave Rubin as just as an example. I mean, the list. Forgive me, all my wonderful conservative public figures whose names I don't, just because it's endless. They're basically a very fine group of people. They're basically happier as well in keeping with this. But police, that's the biggest risk. I did a ride along with the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, I was pro-police because I believe the police are the fine line between barbarity and civilization. That's why they're a policeman. If there was no barbarity, we would not need any police. It's just obvious. And I saw the way they took interest in kids in the inner city, young black kids who came over and hugged them, that the press never covers. They're the fathers that these kids don't have. You're nodding. Is that because you had that too?
Yeah, I saw how much the police cared for members of their community, knew people by name. I just saw a lot of love. And I think that anyone who, before they judge police, they should go on a ride along because their mind might change.
That is a great idea.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Yeah, also, I'm thinking of, as you speak about the effects that riots have on cities that are basically left behind, think of the Watts riots. I mean, listen, right. I would go to Watts, I would go to Compton, I would go to Linwood. You look at Watts. Watts didn't recover. It's insane. And what frustrates me, Larry, you could go back to the educational system. You can go back to government schools. I didn't learn about handling money. I didn't learn about property value. Any of this basic stuff that should be taught, in my opinion, as early as grade school or at least middle school. So it's funny. I remember the L.A. riots. I mean, clearly, it literally started with Reginald Denny, and I forget the gentleman's name that threw the brick at his head. My girlfriend at the time lived.
Damian Football Williams.
Oh, that's right, man. Great memory, Larry. Yeah, I remember my girlfriend lived right around the corner at the time. I was freaking out, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I had a ghetto fabulous mentality. I didn't like seeing that, but I was singing Ice Cube and all this kind of nonsense. But in the end, we lost. The black community lost.
That's right. And in 1992, the police chief was Daryl Gates. And throughout the history of L.A., every police chief had been a white male. Well, since then, we had back-to-back black police chiefs, Willie Williams and Bernard Parks. And right now, the LAPD reflects the demographic diversity of Los Angeles exactly. L.A. is about 40% Hispanic, as is the LAPD, 30% white, as is the LAPD, and the rest are blacks and Asian Americans, as is the LAPD. And still, you have a bunch of activists running around talking about systemic racism.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Award-winning filmmakers Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, along with producer Tamara Henry, bring you the world's most dangerous paper route. Never-before-seen images from legendary Stars and Stripes military newspaper.
In a way, the hometown newspaper of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particular, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the States.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or to Stars and Stripes, and I picked Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's most dangerous paper route.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt on May 10th in the year of our Lord 2022, live inside the Beltway. Back. Thank you, Ed Morrissey, for sitting in for me yesterday as I spent Monday morning walking my granddaughter to the bus stop. I've never done that before. And I spent all day Sunday reading Elmo and Cookie Monster to 3-year-old Genghis Kate and dodging the wiles of the Artful Dodger, to whom I had to pay $20 to take his pillow home because for the first time in a month, I actually can move my neck. And I doubled down on Relief Factor last week. Then I got the right pillow, and I read the Mayo Clinic. I'm still going to go see the orthopedic surgeon to the fighter pilots inside the Beltway. But, you know, to try and get in to see that doc takes a month. So I was really worried about not actually sleeping for a month, but it's better. I pillow, posture, and Relief Factor, but I'm still going in. That's just weird. That's all I can tell you is that it's weird. At the bottom of the hour, I'm going to play you Mitch McConnell's remarkable speech from yesterday about the abortion law Chuck Schumer demands a vote on in the filibuster and everything else. First, let me play for you the fact that a lot of people have noticed the crazies in the abortion anytime, anywhere, all the time movement. The abortion absolutists are now picketing and demonstrating and threatening. I believe it's an assault, actually. I believe it's illegal in the state of Virginia, what they're doing outside the homes of Supreme Court justices. Lindsey Graham on Hannity last night said this, cut number one.
Well, number two, I'm going to write a letter tomorrow to the Attorney General Garland and ask him what is his interpretation of law. There's a law in the books that prevents judges from being harassed and picketed while they're deciding a case. Same for a juror. They're literally violating the law. They violated the law when they went into the Capitol, trespassing in the Capitol, taking matters in their own hands. Everybody yelled at Trump, tell him to leave. Well, here's what I'm telling President Biden. Tell these people to leave the judges alone. Don't go to their home. This is illegal. It's wrong. It's bad for America. It will break the court. Joe Biden needs to step up and take matters into his own hands, and as President of the United States, speak forcefully to these people who are intimidating judges, try to get an outcome in a case which violates our law. Attorney General Garland, you need to issue an opinion tomorrow saying that the activity in front of the judge's house violates the law.
Good for you, Lindsey. It does violate the law in Virginia. Now, I don't know if Merrick Garland should issue that opinion. Attorney General Mayorkas of Virginia ought to issue that opinion because it does, and they ought to arrest those people. And because you do not get to demonstrate in front of people's, even on sidewalks and public streets. It's illegal. It's an assault in Virginia, as I understand the law. Ted Cruz also on Hannity, cut number two.
What we're seeing, these images are the latest manifestation of just how extreme, just how radical the Democratic Party is getting. This Democratic Party today, Joe Biden has handed the agenda over to the socialists, and not just the socialists. This is now the Marxists. This is now the communists. Today's Democrat Party believes in violence. They believe in mob rule. They believe in intimidation. Just like Marxists and communists, they're willing to burn our institutions to the ground to get what they want. This leak from the court is fundamentally destructive to the Supreme Court of the United States, to the rule of law, and to our Constitution. And none of these Democrats care. Joe Biden won't condemn it. The White House won't condemn the leak. Instead, they sit back and say, oh, isn't that interesting? You're just passionate, as Nancy Pelosi says, as Jen Psaki said. Listen, these thugs have no business at the private homes of any government officials, these Supreme Court justices or anyone else. These thugs who dox the justices should be embarrassed and ashamed. And by the way, these are the same thugs that are firebombing pro-life outlets. These are the same thugs that are going into churches, disturbing churches. They hate faith. They hate God. They hate the Catholic Church. And it is disgusting to see Joe Biden and the entirety of the Democratic Party turn a blind eye. What we're seeing, Sean, is a replay of 2020, a replay of the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa riots. And in this instance, once again, they're putting politics above everything else, including people's lives. And these radicals are inviting violence directed at our judiciary and directed at the rule of law.
I agree with this completely. Senator Cruz is correct, and I wish that the court would issue the judgment, opinions to follow. And the opinions may change right up until the day they issue in early July, late June. But I just think they've got to decrease the threat to the justices because I remember very well, I live a couple of miles from the baseball field where a nut tried to take out half the Congress in 2017. And that is what happened. One fanatic can do that. Adam Laxalt, who will be the next senator from Nevada, was on Nevada Newsmakers. He made a very powerful statement, cut number 4.
Let me first just say why I'm pro-life. My mother had me out of wedlock in the 1970s, and she was in her early 20s, no college degree. She got a tremendous amount of pressure to not bring me into this world, and fortunately she made the decision to bring me here. And so I'm always going to believe that I hope people are going to have a chance to live like I have. As far as the future of Roe, it is quite clear that Roe v. Wade was invented by the Supreme Court. Scholars have known that forever. That's been taught in law school since I went in law school a few decades ago. And it was always better left returned to the states. It's because it was put at the federal level that made it such a divisive, highly charged issue, and I think it's better left to the state.
Adam Laxalt is 100%. And he's also, by the way, I have been teaching that in con law classes since 1996, and I am not alone. Every con law professor who has any integrity will say in 1973, a weird majority of the court, led by Harry Blackmun, seized power. Seized power. There was no precedent for it. They expanded the right to privacy that covered contraception among adults and expanded it to the right to abortion. But contraception does not involve another life. Abortion does. Had it been limited to the first 4 weeks of life or 6 weeks of life, someone might have attempted what Virginia Postrel, the great libertarian, said, it's a clump of cells until it's not. And when you can see the nose and the fingers and the legs moving, it's not a clump of cells, it's a person. Virginia Postrel's analysis has always been an aesthetic analysis, not a legal one, but I understand what she's saying. Abortion ought to be subject to reasonable regulation. The rule of reason will apply. The rational basis test will take over from the Roe-Casey test, as Justice Alito articulated, and extremist laws that, for example, prosecute women. That's never going to happen. There isn't a Republican in the country that wants to prosecute women or punish women in any way for having babies or abortions. None. Never. Not one. And secondly, the legislature that passes a law that prohibits abortion in the case where the life of the mother might be in danger of fallopian tubes, for example, that's just never proposed anywhere. That's insane. That's a false flag, a red herring. Let me go down to Lori Lightfoot, though, just to contrast the thoughtful answers of Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz and Adam Laxalt. The mayor of Chicago on MSNBC with Hallie Jackson said this, cut number 10.
Well, I think everybody who saw that draft opinion has gone through a range of different emotions, but we can't just be angry. We've got to be intentional. We've got to be dedicated. And that's why I'm calling upon fellow elected officials across the country, and particularly my fellow mayors, to join me in making the pledge that we made today, which is a Justice for All pledge. And fundamentally, it reaffirms Chicago as a welcoming city, a city that doesn't discriminate, and a city that's going to stand with women.
I think that Lori Lightfoot ought to be spending more time on stopping the number of people who get murdered in Chicago than worrying about national issues like abortion being given back to the state. The city of Illinois has no authority whatsoever in any of this. The legislature of Illinois does, and they've already made it an abortion-friendly state. And Lori Lightfoot is just trying desperately to hang on to some issue that doesn't embarrass her because her city is in shambles. They just lost Boeing headquarters. The big skyscraper, I used to visit my old friend Mike Littig at the Boeing skyscraper, and Boeing's gone because Lori Lightfoot couldn't keep him in Chicago. So, look over here. I'm with you on abortion rights, you extreme leftist. I'm great, aren't I? Pay no attention to the corporations fleeing our city. Pay no attention to the body count over the weekend. Pay no attention to anything except I'm on MSNBC talking to the hard left, the 0.5% of America that's the hard left, that is running the Democratic Party. And that's what it is. It's an extremist party, an absolute extremist party. Do not be confused. Roe v. Wade is not going to make abortion illegal, the repeal of Roe and Casey. But the court should issue the judgment, opinions to follow. Tom Cotton said that on this show a week ago today, and I have not been, I was persuaded then, I am still persuaded now. Issue the judgment, opinions to follow. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned. My number is 1-800-520-1234. Should the court issue its opinion now, a judgment now with opinions to follow? 1-800-520-1234. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you make the internet safe, then you make the system safer for everyone. Big tech puts black people, black is of course capitalized, people of color, I'm shocked that that's not capitalized, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else. Really? Big tech puts black people, so big tech, which allows constantly for the degradation of people with white skin, but they're putting black people, people of color, that's obviously non-black, non-whites, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
They're not objective. Edward R. Murrow ought to be rolling in his grave. Now, let me just ask you flat out, and I really want to get your honest assessment of this. Are you comfortable and are you glad that people like Marjorie Taylor Greene are in Congress? Or are you like my friend Mark Davis, who sort of wishes that people like MTG would sort of pump the brakes a little bit on the rhetoric, on the over-the-top, in-your-face, persona? I just think we need more Marjorie Taylor Greenes and less Mitt Romneys. I think we need fighters if we're going to have a chance.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
As Galileans, we witnessed his first miracle. He warned us that a time of great deception would come. But we must hold on to our faith that one day he would return to save us from the end of the world.
What if there was evidence that proves that this is all real?
Because there were so many people bringing up little bits and pieces of this. I'm thinking, there's got to be a pattern here. This discovery proves that he is coming back.
This is the most profound discovery in human history.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan. It really does work, if you believe.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans
Detective Tom is calling from Oakland to bust my chops. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. Good morning, Detective Tom. How are you?
Fine, thank you, sir. I was actually filling my car up with $6 gas, and I just kind of thought, I need a lawyer's opinion here. Is there a Yeah, well, okay. In lieu of getting one, I'll talk to you. How's that?
What did I just tell you, people? Detective Tom is like the guy who rides in the chariot behind the triumpher in Rome, whispering all things are mortal. He calls me in. He's my whisperer. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, you are not a god, all right. All right, listen. Okay, so I was getting a little adventurous. Are these elements of these whack jobs in front of the justice's house, could this be considered obstruction of justice?
It's a violation of a Virginia statute. That's all. And although there is a federal statute that says you may not attempt to influence, it's a crime to attempt to influence a legal proceeding. And
well,
so
what
you
are they doing?
They could be doing that. That would be a stretch. I prefer if the Virginia authorities arrest them, and just because they're breaking the law. And in Virginia, they're going to get prosecuted, unlike in Oakland.
Yeah, no, they would get a letter of accommodation. Correct. Okay. Exactly. And should they release the opinion? I don't. I want the person who leaked it, and then let the media go ahead and hail the individual.
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, I had breakfast before I drove down to be with the grandkids on Saturday morning with my old bosses from the White House, Fred Fielding and Dick Hauser, and we were talking about whether or not 28 U.S.C. 1001 applies to a marshal's investigation of clerks.
Gotcha.
And they said absolutely it does. So and I said, okay, listen to you. Now, I don't trust Hauser on a golf tee. If Hauser brought out at one point a billfold full of 20s that he had taken off some poor golfers he'd played with that week. So I do not trust him on a golf tee. Do not give him strokes. And I warned someone about that who might play golf with him. I said, do not give Hauser strokes. But as to 28 U.S.C. 1001, the answer is yes. And if the leaker lies to the marshal, they should go to jail.
Okay, well then, you know what? Then next time you see your friend, the Chief Justice, at a Christmas party or something, this is on him. This is his court.
I think he's going to hit. I think this recording may get around the court. I know that at least 2 and perhaps more justices listen every morning, and we're in the zone. This is about when they go in.
Okay, like I said, I couldn't get a lawyer, so I had to call you. But thank you for your.
You know what? You're going to get exactly what you paid for. Exactly what you paid for in terms of legal.
Yeah, my check's in the mail too.
By the way, what's the fill-up cost on the car?
Right now, it's $5.98 a gallon. So for 15 gallons, I didn't officially look, but it had to be in the $75-80 range.
Yeah, don't you think Gavin Newsom should run for president? Don't you think?
You clearly need a bigger car.
You need a bigger car.
Let's unleash Mr. Bitchin on the United States of America. He reminds me of all the guys I went to college with. Oh yeah.
Tom, thank you. Be well. Kate in Atlanta. What do you say, Kate?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. I think they should issue their ruling today and do the opinions later, like you suggested.
No, Tom Cotton suggested that. I'm just stealing Cotton's suggestion.
Well, I think it would be better. Otherwise, this is going to all come up again in June. But I also would like to just say quickly, I'm 78, and I remember the day that Roe v. Wade came down. I was 26, and there was emotions exactly the same as there are now. There was anguish on one side and excitement on the other. But at no time do I remember the pro-life or pro-abortion group acting like these people are acting. They did protest, but they protested in front of the Supreme Court, and they didn't go into churches.
Well, in all fairness, Operation Rescue went to the equivalent of churches on the left. They went to abortion clinics, and they obstructed the entrance, and there was violence, and one guy shot one doctor. All right?
They did. But what has happened to people?
Well, they're nuts.
What's wrong with us?
The media in today's America fuels insanity and fanaticism. And it is an unfortunate and terrible thing. Instead of, why don't we reason together and why don't you try and understand the other person's point of view? I perfectly understand, and I have read every opinion of every justice in every case. And I normally don't care much about dissent. I know this issue backwards and forwards like few other people in the United States, and it belongs with the states, and reasonable restrictions on abortion is a supermajority opinion in the United States, and so it will remain after Roe and Casey are overturned. Thank you very much, Kate. Go nowhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Fiance? No, I can't be your fiance.
You're gonna go. You're gonna be my fiance, and you're gonna be the most amazing, fascinating, most successful man ever. We're only gonna be there for a few hours, eat dinner, and I promise we'll have the best breakup of all time.
My baby, my princess. Oh, yeah.
Beat a little bit. Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So sending to Congress a comprehensive package of, that will enhance our underlying effort to accommodate the Russian oligarchs and make sure we take their ill-begotten gains. We're going to accommodate them. We're going to seize their yachts, their luxury homes, and other ill-begotten gains of Putin's kleptocracy and the guys who are the kleptocracies.
Whoa. That's the President of the United States. That's the guy, I guarantee you, some people listening pull the lever for. You happy now? You happy where you got us?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain that the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
The only time you can come to Christ when the Spirit of God comes.
You ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermanos. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
And Shapiro or I mean, I could, the whole list or.
Because then you don't have the caricatured version of conservatives.
That's right. Yes, exactly. It's shattering.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. So you were with police, and by the way, I was going to add Dave Rubin as just as an example. I mean, the list. Forgive me, all my wonderful conservative public figures whose names I don't. That is a great idea.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at Rumble.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. On Friday, I was on Special Report. Brett wasn't in. Trace Gallagher was sitting in for Brett. But Friday is always winners and losers night on Special Report. So I was asked for a winner of the week, and here is what I said.
I got one winner from you, Hugh. Go ahead.
It's the pro-life legal groups, and there are dozens of them. I know the Alliance Defending Freedom is the one I've worked with the most, Thomas More. It took them 25, 30 years after the Casey decision, but they are on the brink of a long-sought victory. That is, I was short. That's 14 seconds. When a director's in your ear saying rap, it's a 15-second warning. And Alliance Defending Freedom has been on the road, along with Thomas More, the National Right to Life. There are about a dozen pro-life litigation groups that deserve respect. I think Alliance Defending Freedom is the one that pursues most consistently every aspect of the center-right legal theory of originalism. They protect religious liberty. They have striven to protect the rights of the unborn. They have a role in this case. I'll expand on it all at some point when we get the final decision. But Alliance Defends, follow them on Twitter. They are just amazing, and I'm glad I had that opportunity to say that on the air. But nothing like the eloquence of Mitch McConnell, Senate leader of the Republicans, of course, took to the floor yesterday, and here is what he said about the Federal Abortion Act that is pending, the filibuster that must be broken if it was to pass. Cut number 3.
2 years ago, the Senate Democratic leader rallied a crowd on the steps of the Supreme Court and threatened judges by name if they did not resolve an abortion case the way he wanted. Here was the quote. I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you if you go forward with these awful decisions. This incitement triggered rare public rebukes from the Chief Justice himself and even the liberal American Bar Association. But apparently the radical left heard their marching orders loud and clear. Since the precedent-setting leak of a draft opinion last week, the left has set out to harass and intimidate sitting judges as they consider a pending case. We've seen angry crowds assemble at judges' private family homes. Activists published a map of their addresses. Law enforcement has had to install a security fence around the Supreme Court itself. trying to scare federal judges into ruling a certain way is far outside the bounds of First Amendment speech or protest. It is an attempt to replace the rule of law with the rule of mobs. It appears this may possibly be flat out illegal. There's a federal law on the books that criminalizes, quote, pickets or parades, end quote, with the intent of influencing any judge, juror, witness, or court officer at locations, listen to this, that include a judge's residence. Last year, Attorney General Garland's Justice Department was quick to treat the concerned parents of America like potential domestic terrorists. But curiously, I haven't heard any announcement about how the DOJ may handle these intimidation tactics aimed directly at federal judges. Washington Democrats have gone out of their way to fuel the hysterical, potentially dangerous climate. The president's statement about the unprecedented leak didn't condone it. His press secretary has repeatedly appeared to endorse rallies at judges' private family residence as long as they don't turn into outright violence. The senior senator from Massachusetts stood on the Supreme Court steps and shouted, quote, "We're going to fight back." Democrats are renewing their calls to break the Senate in order to pack the court. They want to destroy two institutions for the price of one. One liberal Georgetown law professor helpfully summarized their mission as follows. He explained this past weekend that the key moral difference between this pressure campaign and the January 6th riot is that in this case, quote, now listen to this, the mob is right. So what has generated this reckless outrage? What is the Armageddon over which Democrats want to break the Senate, pack the court, and condone potentially illegal rallies outside judges' family homes? Here's the case in question. Whether the state of Mississippi can enact an abortion law that would still be more liberal than laws in Germany, France, and Switzerland. This is the case that's driving these hysterics. The possibility that abortion laws might begin to move away from China and North Korea and closer to Germany, France, and Switzerland. That's what prompted the calls to destroy our institutions and surround judges' family homes. That's why a pro-life nonprofit in Wisconsin got a Molotov cocktail through its window, and activists call for disruptions of Sunday worship. Today's Democratic Party is profoundly out of step with the American people on this issue. Their extreme position ignores modern science and public opinion. Leader Schumer wants the Senate to vote again on a Democratic bill that would effectively legalize abortion on demand through all 9 months. Their bill is written to protect abortionists rather than mothers. It would roll back health regulations. It would attack America's conscience rights and religious freedoms. It would overturn modest and overwhelmingly popular safeguards like waiting periods, informed consent laws, and possibly even parental notification. And it's written that so in practice, it would allow effective abortion until birth. Democrats' extreme position is radical on a global scale and wildly unpopular with the American people. Only 34% of Americans believe abortion should be legal in all or most cases into the second trimester. That drops to 19% in the third trimester, but that is what Democrats' bill would allow in practice. Every Senate Democrat but 2 and every House Democrat except a handful have put their name on this as co-sponsors. That means 97% of Washington Democrats support a position that only 19% of Americans actually want. So I'll say that again. 97% of Democrats in Congress are co-sponsors of an outcome that has 19% public support. And notwithstanding inflation, energy insecurity, open borders, a violent crime wave, and a war in Europe, Democrats want to spend this week explaining their extremism. Some Democrats even want to try again to break the Senate in order to ram this through. I've clearly stated I will never support smashing the legislative filibuster on this issue or any other. Yet Democrats want to wreck our institutions over their fringe position that Americans do not share. I can understand why my colleagues want to distract from their governing record. Their policies have created a living nightmare for working families. But Democrats' extreme and unpopular position on abortion is not going to bail them out. It just gives Americans yet another reminder that the radicals are running the show.
There was Leader McConnell yesterday. The radicals are running the show in the Senate. He's right. The Democratic Party has been captured by its extreme left at every level, top to bottom, which is why I am endorsing David McCormick in the Pennsylvania Senate race. And I hope, I've got like a dozen affiliates in Pennsylvania, Philly, Pittsburgh, of course, Harrisburg, a number of other places. Scranton, I love my Scranton affiliates, been up there. And I'll tell you what, I rarely do this. I rarely get involved in a primary. I do it in Missouri because Eric Greitens will lose that seat. Eric Greitens is a bad guy, and he will lose that seat. Do not vote for Eric Greitens. But in Pennsylvania, there are a lot of nice people running, but it is a very difficult seat to hold. It took Pat Toomey's incredible skill as a retail politician, his incredible drive to win twice, and he's retiring. And I look at the candidates, and I know Carla Sands. I've had her on the show. I've had Kathy Barnett on the show. Dr. Oz won't return my phone call. We've extended it to him many, many times. And they're all nice people. Former President Trump endorsed Dr. Oz. They will not win that election. They will lose to Fetterman. We need someone with the grit and the experience of David McCormick. He is a Bronze Star recipient, a member of the 101st Airborne, West Point graduate wearing the Ranger cap. The amazing thing is that he agreed to run for Senate. He has lots of money. He doesn't need this headache. He's in the prime of life. He doesn't need to do anything except enjoy life. And he's offered to serve. And I've had him on 3 or 4 times. I've had Carla Sands on. Ambassador Sands is wonderful too, but she's at 7% in the poll. She's not going to catch up. I kind of wish she would endorse David McCormick. Kathy Barnett I've had on. She's wonderful. She's charismatic. I hope she goes for a congressional seat where she could begin a career and take out in a couple of years or 4 years after serving in office Bob Casey Jr. But in this election cycle, when we must hold Pennsylvania, we being Republicans, I am a Republican, to my friends in Pennsylvania, please vote for David McCormick. Now, the election is a week from today. Some people are doing early voting. And I've studied, it's very close because there are 5 candidates. Very close. There are 6 candidates. Maybe there's 7. I don't know. But there are a number of people with single digits. And Dr. Oz is in there a little bit behind McCormick. And I just want to tell you, do not throw your vote away. Head over to Andrew and Todd, please. AndrewandTodd.com. AndrewandTodd.com. They are my friends who lend money. And they lend money for the purposes of buying houses. They're with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. And I want to encourage you to please use them now because interest rates are going up, up, up. And you're not going to buy as much house or buy any house at all unless you move. 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172 to connect with AndrewandTodd.com. And please do not forget ReliefFactor.com, the other sponsor. AndrewandTodd.com are sponsors, so are ReliefFactor.com. You see me today, if you're watching on the Sam News channel, see what I'm doing with my neck, which I haven't done for 2 weeks? 3 weeks, actually. And it's been 6 months since it's been fine. Now, I think it's a combination of listening to Mayo Clinic and adopting the right posture, changing pillows, and Relief Factor doubling down. But it worked. It worked again. And I encourage all of you who've got a particular ailment, something that just bothers the heck out of you. I was complaining all last week. You people were saying, I'm complaining too much about my neck. They got worse problems than that. I know it's not the end of the world to have complete sore neck. But I'm glad it's gone. And it's gone. Thank you, the pillow. It's about an inch and a quarter, and I've been using the wrong pillow, and the Mayo Clinic said put a pillow under your knees, and relieffactor.com.
Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Sticking up for little kids, not wanting them to get groomed, not wanting them to be abused, and shame on them for intervening against us. But that's what they did. That's who they are on the side of the teachers unions. So anyway, the Friedrichs fix was the unions went into the state houses that they control, the blue states, and they said, look, looks like this lawsuit's going to win, and it's going to end forced unionism. We were all forced to pay unions as a condition of employment. Looks like they're going to win. So we got to pass all these fixes so that we don't lose all our people paying the unions. So what they did was, one of the fixes that was passed in California, that every person who's in a union shop, their personal contact information is given to these government unions on a regular basis. I think it's 3 or 4 times a year, but nobody else can have their contact information. Another thing they did was they made it illegal for government employers to tell their employees their new rights, so that when they won the right to no longer pay these government unions, people don't know they have the right because their employer's not allowed to tell them. Another thing is the unions got the right to get 30 minutes with every new employee so they can harangue them and harass them and tell them all about how they need to join the union, but nobody else gets that time with those employees. And they do it on company dime, taxpayer dime. And company time. So it's just unbelievable. The unions pull all these tricks to make everything in their favor and to make it almost impossible for us to reach people with the truth that they no longer have to fund these unions. So that's why we made this movie, Whose Children Are They? That's why we started our group for Kids and Country, and I wrote a book, and we did all this just to educate people on, you don't have to pay these wicked unions anymore. And yes, they are wicked. I'll say it. What they're doing is wicked.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. This morning I endorsed David McCormick in the Pennsylvania Senate race. And to all of you in Pennsylvania who are listening, I want you to hear my thinking on this, because this is important. We being Republicans, and I am one and have been my entire life, to remind those of you who are a new affiliate up in Erie, Pennsylvania, I went to work for Ronald Reagan in 1983 at the Department of Justice. Then I went into the White House counsel's office in 1984. I ended that administration as the acting director of the United States Office of Personnel Management, and then I left for California. And I did not come back until Bill Bennett retired, and I came back to D.C. Every step of the way that I've been in media, people know I am a Republican. I am not an independent. I am a Republican. I have voted for exactly 2 Democrats in my entire life. One was running for Congress in an open primary, and he was a friend of mine, so I voted for him to get him into the finals where John Campbell crushed him. And that was inevitable. I voted for John Campbell in the final. And the other, I voted for Bernie Sanders in the Virginia state primary because I wanted Bernie Sanders to be the nominee of the Democratic Party because I think he represents them. And it's an open primary, and it was a foregone conclusion that Donald Trump was going to be nominated, so I voted for Bernie. I announced that on Meet the Press, by the way. So I do not vote for Democrats ever. So, Democrats out there just discount my political takes on races. But I know where the Senate is. It's 50-50. The Republicans, in order to get a majority back and block Joe Biden's insanity, have to get to 51. To get to 51, they need to win New Hampshire and Georgia and Arizona and Nevada and maybe Colorado and Washington. There are 6 Democratic seats in play. But they can't afford to lose. They cannot lose Pennsylvania or Ohio or Missouri. All right, so in Ohio, they've nominated J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance will win. In Missouri, we won't know until August if the idiocy of people nominates Eric Greitens, who's unelectable. He's the most radioactive candidate I've ever interviewed. He will lose. He's Todd Aiken times 2. Todd Aiken made some misstatements and was a nice guy who just wasn't a very good campaigner. Eric Greitens got an out-of-jail-free card because the prosecutor was incompetent, and he was almost impeached, but he quit before they could impeach him. And there's so many black marks against Eric Greitens, and he's grifting his way to some endorsements with people who are making money off of him. But Eric Greitens will lose. But Pennsylvania, there are good candidates. There's nobody who's bad in Pennsylvania. Kathy Barnett is pro-life, and I understand that. Dr. Oz, I don't know what he is. He certainly isn't willing to be interviewed. And so I'm very suspicious of people who won't come on to a friendly but firm forum where I ask direct questions. Eric Greitens tried, and I shredded him. Not intentionally, just couldn't answer obvious questions about his very, very checkered past. But McCormick has come here, Carla Sands has come here, and every time I've talked to, I've never met David McCormick in person. I know a lot of people who know him and say he's the real deal. He really is the 101st Airborne West Point grad who received the Bronze Star for Valor in Operation Desert Storm. He really is the successful investor. He really is the job creator. He really is from Pennsylvania. Unfortunately, he really is a Steelers fan. I am overlooking the last thing because we have to win Pennsylvania. Republicans must win Pennsylvania. So there is no policy difference between McCormick and Barnett and Sands. They are all very strong conservatives. There is a lot of difference in terms of ability to campaign and win. I think maybe Sands could win. I do not think Barnett will win. Barnett lost her first run for Congress by double digits. Winning a Republican primary is not the same as a general. It will not fly in a general. I am a product of rape, and I was raised on a pig farm. It's inspiring. I'd like to see her in the next Republican administration. I'd like to see her in Congress. You don't run for Senate after losing a congressional race. First, you win the congressional race. You serve for a few years. It doesn't work. Now, I'll be all for her if she's the nominee, or if Carla Sands stages a comeback. If Dr. Oz wins, I'll be all for him. I am just looking at this. David McCormick's the best candidate, Pennsylvania. He will represent the Keystone State well, even though he's a Steelers fan. I suppose that goes with the territory. Probably he'll say nice things about the Eagles, too, but I don't care about the Eagles. Hate the Steelers. But David McCormick, these are serious times. We need serious candidates who are prepared to serve. Right? We need serious candidates who know the Senate. We need serious candidates who know national security. We need serious people on the floor of the United States Senate who win. We cannot lose that seat and get a majority to get to 51. So I hope the McConnell pack weighs in this last week. I hope McCormick weighs in this last week. I hope I've got an invite to Dave McCormick to come back. I rarely do this. It's the last week. Early voting is underway. Next Tuesday, Pennsylvania votes. Pennsylvania voters, please listen to me. I'm not from Pennsylvania. I'm from 7 miles away. 7 miles from Sharon. I know you people. I know you root for the Steelers. But you got to vote for David McCormick for Senate in the Republican primary next week. David McCormick for Senate. I'll be right back, America. Stay tuned, unless you're a Pennsylvania voter, in which case go get your absentee and mark it for David McCormick for Senate. I'll be right back on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Hugh Hewitt Show is now available on TV. Go to salemnewschannel.com or download the app. You can also watch on Roku and Fire Stick. Salem News Channel, the antidote to the mainstream media.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain that the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Billy Graham.
Gloria a Dios, hermano. ¿Quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de sus palabras?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
And Shapiro or I mean, I could, the whole list or.
Because then you don't have the caricatured version of conservatives.
That's right. Yes, exactly. It's shattering.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be. So you were with police, and by the way, I was going to add Dave Rubin as just as an example. I mean, the list. Forgive me, all my wonderful conservative public figures whose names I don't, just because it's endless. They're basically a very fine group of people. They're basically happier as well in keeping with this. But police, that's the biggest risk. I did a ride along with the LAPD, the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, I was pro-police because I believe the police are the fine line between barbarity and civilization. That's why they're a policeman. If there was no barbarity, we would not need any police. It's just obvious. And I saw the way they took interest in kids in the inner city, young black kids who came over and hugged them, that the press never covers. They're the fathers that these kids don't have. You're nodding. Is that because you had that too?
Yeah, I saw how much the police cared for members of their community, knew people by name. I just saw a lot of love. And I think that anyone who, before they judge police, they should go on a ride along because their mind might change.
That is a great idea.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Yeah, also, I'm thinking of, as you speak about the effects that riots have on cities that are basically left behind. Think of the Watts riots. I mean, listen. Right. I would go to Watts. I would go to Compton. I would go to Linwood. You look at Watts. Watts didn't recover. It's insane. And what frustrates me, Larry, you could go back to the educational system. You can go back to government schools. I didn't learn about handling money. I didn't learn about property value. Any of this basic stuff that should be taught, in my opinion, as early as grade school or at least middle school. So it's funny. I remember the L.A. riots. I mean, clearly, it literally started with Reginald Denny, and I forget the gentleman's name that threw the brick at his head. My girlfriend at the time lived. Damian Football Williams. Oh, that's right, man. Great memory, Larry. Yeah, I remember my girlfriend lived right around the corner at the time. I was freaking out, like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" But I had a ghetto fabulous mentality. I didn't like seeing that, but I was singing Ice Cube and all this kind of nonsense. But in the end, we lost. The black community lost. That's right. And in 1992, the police chief was Daryl Gates. And throughout the history of L.A., every police chief had been a white male. Well, since then, we had back-to-back black police chiefs, Willie Williams and Bernard Parks. And right now, the LAPD reflects the demographic diversity of Los Angeles exactly. L.A. is about 40% Hispanic, as is the LAPD, 30% white, as is the LAPD, and the rest are blacks and Asian Americans, as is the LAPD. And still, you have a bunch of activists running around talking about systemic racism.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Award-winning filmmakers Stephen Barber and Matthew Housley, along with producer Tamara Henry, bring you the world's most dangerous paper route. Never-before-seen images from legendary Stars and Stripes military newspaper.
In a way, the hometown newspaper of the U.S. military.
Well, everybody read it. In the field, in particular, people were hungry for it. And there were no punches pulled. We knew what was going on in the state.
Don't worry about the bullet with your name on it. Worry about those flying around that say to whom it may concern.
I had a choice between going to Armed Forces Network or to Stars and Stripes, and I picked Stars and Stripes.
Join Vanilla Fire Productions as they head downrange to Afghanistan, Iraq, and Kuwait to follow the world's most dangerous paper route.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
When you look at what SpaceX has done with their reusable rockets, we are seeing science fiction of the 1950s coming to life. Rockets land as they always were meant to do.
It's really trying to land on a postage stamp.
Elon Musk is a visionary, someone who comes along perhaps once a century. It's one thing to run a company that's worth $1 billion. Elon Musk has 4.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
If I were to pick the most consequential conservative of the modern era, it would be Roger Ailes.
So is he the pit bull of American politics?
When Roger Ailes is on your team, you win.
Go to salemnow.com.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada, Hugh Hewitt. I want to thank Ed Morrissey for sitting in for me yesterday. Over the weekend, the head of Russia's space agency threatened Elon Musk. Now, I don't know Elon Musk. I don't own any Tesla stock, as far as I know. It might be in a mutual fund. But I'll tell you what, he's an American who's been threatened by the Russians. So I asked National Security Advisor Robert C. O'Brien to join me this morning to talk about that and big tech generally. Good morning, Ambassador O'Brien. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
First of all, do you work for Elon Musk? I know you consult for a bunch of big companies. Is Tesla one of them, or SpaceX?
No, we don't. We don't work for Elon, but Elon, feel free to call us. We'd love to help you.
Well, first of all, tell me, what did you think of a Russian official threatening an American citizen?
Well, this is a very serious issue, especially in light of the fact that Russia has a history of assassinating its opponents. And so the FBI is almost certainly consulted with Elon. There's a duty to warn that the FBI has for American citizens who have been threatened by foreign governments. And unfortunately, it happens more and more with China, Iran, now Russia getting into this game of threatening Americans. So Elon, I'm sure, has great security. He can certainly afford it. But the U.S., because of Elon's role in the Ukraine crisis and the great work that his companies have done, really ought to be thinking about supplementing his security, at least giving them daily intelligence feeds and potentially giving him government security to work with his private folks. I mean, this is a very serious threat.
Very serious threat. And it also underscores that what Elon Musk did was significant. I mean, he may be nominated for a Nobel Prize next year because I think he helped save Ukraine. What do you think of my assessment there?
Well, he should be, because Ukraine is winning the information war in this war. And the reason it's winning is because of the United States of America, and specifically U.S. private sector tech companies. And there are two big reasons, Hugh. First is Musk and Starlink. What he did was unprecedented. As you know, in the early day or two of the war, Russia tried to use its technical capabilities to take Ukraine off the internet and to prevent President Zelensky and the Ukrainians from communicating with the outside world. Elon Musk stepped in an unprecedented fashion for a private company, repositioned Starlink satellites, and then sent within 24 hours of the invasion uplink terminals so that Ukraine and President Zelensky would remain connected to the internet. I don't think there's a similar example of a private sector company outside of a Marvel movie with a character doing that in real life. It's amazing what he did. And
he is the Tony Stark of the private sector, and a Medal of Freedom would be at least a Medal of Freedom, because he really did. That matters. Technology matters so much in this war, correct?
Oh, 100%. Imagine this war if Ukraine was not connected to the outside world via the internet. And the second shout out I'll give, and I've been very critical of U.S. social media companies on your show and others, as you know, Hugh, over the years, but it's U.S. social media platforms that then allowed Zelensky to use that internet link up with Starlink to get the message out, to show the war crimes, the targeting of civilians, the resilience of the Ukrainian people. And it's, the Facebook and Google and Twitter, which Elon may own soon, and all these other social media platforms that got the message out to the whole world. And it did two things. Number one, it galvanized the West and it galvanized Europe. But number two, there were a lot of countries that are either neutral or sympathetic to Putin and Russia that may not have put this information out, but they couldn't avoid it because their people were watching what was happening on social media. So between Elon providing the internet access and the Ukrainians taking advantage of social media platforms that have worldwide reach, Ukraine has won this information war. It's really astounding. So, a lesson here is we need to be careful about what we do with big tech, notwithstanding our legitimate concerns, because breaking up big tech would have left the People's Republic of China and their massive internet companies, TikTok and others, which have been very helpful to the Russians and censored for the Russians. That would have allowed them to control the worldwide global information space. And can you imagine how different Ukraine would look if you were watching the war on TikTok as opposed to American social media platforms?
This is in stark relief, and therefore I wanted to talk about it with you. I am a huge critic of big tech because of the censorship that they have practiced domestically. On the other hand, I've also said, don't run off and bring a Sherman Antitrust Act against. That's a blunt instrument. That is not a regulatory approach to the problems that ail big tech. Number one, the private sector is acting. Elon Musk is itself the private sector working to correct Twitter's errors. But I am curious, do you think that the old antitrust laws ought to be force-fit, square peg and round holes or vice versa to address big tech? I think we need new legislation and new rules.
No, I agree with you, Hugh, and I wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal back in December, and it got a lot of attention. Breaking up big tech with antitrust tools is a very blunt instrument, and number one, it would be terrible for the information space, but number two, these companies have scale. And the only way we can stay in competition with the Chinese, and the Chinese Communist Party is pumping hundreds of billions of dollars every year into their AI, quantum computing, machine learning, all these technologies of the future. The U.S. still has an edge, and that's why I'm confident that the U.S. is going to prevail in big power competition. But the edge doesn't come from the government. It doesn't come from government research programs or government bureaucracies. The edge comes from these large U.S. private sector companies that have the scale to do the research and the innovation that keep us in the game. And think about SpaceX, another Elon Musk situation. If it wasn't for SpaceX, we'd still be reliant on the Russians to get American astronauts down from the space station during this war. Can you imagine the leverage they'd have on us? We don't have that problem because Elon Musk, cut through the bureaucracy of the big defense contractors and NASA and developed a way to get us to space. Jeff Bezos is doing the same thing, and there are other U.S. companies that are doing. We've got a renaissance in space because of the private sector. So we've got to be very careful about using the blunt instruments of antitrust with Republican conservatives joining up with Amy Klobuchar and Chuck Schumer to destroy American businesses. We need to regulate those businesses. There's no question about it. The censorship and the bias in big tech against conservatives has to be fixed. It's a real concern. It's not a fake concern. It's a real concern. But we've got to be careful how we do it so we don't destroy these great national treasures and assets of this country.
Now, I have come to this position after sitting down for dinner a couple of times with Mark Zuckerberg and talking to him on this show. And the dinner with Zuckerberg had not been one-on-one, so I don't want to give that impression. However, among the people that were there, Ross Douthat, the first question as we went around the table, I said, "Are you a patriot?" And Zuckerberg looked at me, stunned. Of course I'm a patriot. And he ran through all the programs he was running with DARPA. Facebook, Meta now, was running with DARPA. And from that point forward, I've begun to think that what we need is a highly specific set of regs to assure content neutrality, but not to cripple. And you say we need scale. Would you explain scale for the Steelers fans out there?
Coming from a Browns fan, I
know scale.
I'm from L.A. and a Rams fan. I think we got the trophy this year. Look, we have to have companies that can spend billions of dollars a year on esoteric research, on basic research into artificial intelligence and quantum computing and machine learning and all the other areas of tech. Because the U.S. government just doesn't spend the kind of money. We're not a command economy. We spend some of the money through DARPA, but even the money we spend through DARPA gets funneled, and that's an advanced research program of the Pentagon. That money still gets funneled through private sector firms. So without a robust private sector, without a private sector with companies that can literally spend tens and twenties and hundreds of billions of dollars researching these, we're going to get left in the dust by the Chinese. There's no government equivalent to what our private sector companies are doing. So if we break up those companies, we're handing the tech high ground to China, to ByteDance and TikTok and Huawei and all these instrumentalities of the Chinese Communist Party. And guess what? They're going to, if you think shadow banning and some of the activities of Twitter were bad, and they were, can you imagine what it's going to be like when tech is controlled and all your social media platforms are controlled from Beijing and not from Silicon Valley?
Last question. We got about a minute, Ambassador O'Brien. Why is Silicon Valley, you're California, why are they so tone deaf? I mean, Mark is the only guy who has reached out to actually hear, I don't know how much it made it through, but to talk to serious conservatives about these issues. Silicon Valley's in a deep blue bubble. It is tone deaf.
Well, it's in California, and it's a bubble in California, and it's fed by my former university, my law school, Berkeley, and your school, Harvard, and Stanford, and the elites control these places, and so folks come into those companies with a bias already. But I think you're starting to see a revolt even in Silicon Valley. You've got folks like Peter Thiel and and Blake Masters, who's running for Senate now in Arizona, is a conservative. You've got Elon Musk, who's a libertarian. So I think you're starting to see a diversity of opinion. And I also think with some of these companies, the backlash, whether it's Disney in Florida or the stock prices, I think they're realizing they can't cut out half the country.
Robert C. O'Brien, Ambassador O'Brien, thank you, and thank you, Elon Musk, for what you've done. And I hope that the federal government is adding to his own private security the vast resources of our eyes and ears around the world, because he saved Ukraine. I mean, Elon Musk saved Ukraine in the first weeks of this war, and Americans ought to know that. Thank you, Ambassador O'Brien, former National Security Advisor to President Trump. I'll be right back.
Trending now on Wilkow.
And here's my serious question. You could ask this perhaps of friends, family members, or coworkers. If you're against this bill that simply sets age appropriateness between kindergarten and third grade, all of these people in Hollywood are for abortion. How would you explain an abortion to a 5-year-old? Would you show them medically accurate images? Would you show them a video? Would you explain in perfect medical, scientific only, clinical language what an abortion is? No, you wouldn't. Well, why not? You certainly could to a 17, 18-year-old, a senior in high school who's graduating. Why wouldn't you explain it the exact same way to a 5-year-old? I can't hear you. Because that's not, say it with me, age appropriate. So that means that when we're talking about war or violence, death and destruction, medical issues, sexual orientation and transgender issues, there are some things that we don't need to explicitly explain to a 5-year-old or a 6-year-old or even a 7-year-old. You get them in 4th grade. Is that not good enough? And the other side of this is, why don't you just tell us why you're so obsessed with explaining sexual orientation, sex, and transgenderism to a 5-year-old?
Keep up with what's trending. Watch Wilkow at 5 p.m. Eastern on Salem News Channel. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Those who self-describe as very liberal, 39% thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every single year. 8% thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year. Those who just described as liberal, not very liberal, half of them thought the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. The year they did the survey, the police killed 12. Yet half of those who are liberal in this country believe the police kill 1,000 unarmed black men every year. No wonder they're upset. If I thought the police killed 10,000 unarmed black men every year, I'd be in the streets yelling and screaming too. My point is, they are ill-informed. They are ignorant. So part of the reason that they're so angry is because they are so completely, totally ill-informed.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
You called your son, and you personally promised him you would be here.
Prayer is a powerful thing, Ethan.
It really does work, if you believe. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The kind of work that establishment Republicans are too gutless to do. They're willing to stand up and say, we've got to fight because they don't play right. They don't play fair. They're dirty.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. If you're a new listener to the Hugh Hewitt Show, you know that the show is 80% politics and policy, 15% whatever catches my attention, and 5% Cleveland Guardians, Browns, and Cavaliers sports. I'm a season ticket holder to the Cleveland Browns and have been since the return of the club in 1999. I attended every home game between 1965 and 1974 of the Browns, and I'm a Cleveland Guardians fan and diehard fan. And so wake up each morning. I have to go to bed pretty early, so I don't catch the ends of most games. But the Guardians last night, they have a player named Josh Naylor, who came to them from the San Diego Padres in the trade for Mike Clevenger a few years ago. And Josh Naylor is a promising outfielder, first baseman, DH. And last year he suffered a gruesome compound fracture. And it was a question whether he'd ever play baseball again. A lot of people saw that and said, Joe Theismann, Redskins kind of injury. And so Naylor has come back. And last night he did something quite amazing, unprecedented in the annals of baseball. Here's the call from the voice of the Guardians, Tom Hamilton.
Then the White Sox had a couple of errors, and suddenly Cleveland's got them loaded. The pitch to Naylor, and he sends one high, deep to center. It is gone! Unbelievable! A grand slam for Josh Naylor. The 5th for Cleveland. We are tied at 8. The set, the pitch. Swung on and blasted into deep right field. This ball gone! How about that? Naylor with 8 RBIs in his last 3 at-bats. And Cleveland gets a 2-out, 3-run homer from Naylor. Look out, he's coming into the dugout like a bull in a china shop. Holy cow! Cleveland takes the lead 12-9 here in the 11th. They pitch to him.
Oh my gosh. He ties it up with a grand slam in the top of the 9th inning. Josh Naylor does for the Guardians. And then he puts the Guardians ahead to win in the 11th in Chicago against the White Sox. Back-to-back home runs, a grand slam, and a 3-run dinger. It's never happened in the history of baseball. Back-to-back home runs, grand slam, 3-run to win the game. It wasn't walk-off. It wasn't a walk-off because it was top of the inning. They're playing in Chicago. What an amazing performance. So I tell Generalissimo, who thinks he knows a little bit about baseball because he's umped Little League Baseball, and he says, oh, that's nothing. Let me tell you about the Angels. And I got to admit, Generalissimo, the Angels had a good night too.
The Angels had a great night. Back-to-back by Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani, and then Ohtani comes up his next at-bat after that and hits a salami himself. 11-3 win over a much better team, I might add, the Tampa Bay Rays.
I don't know about the teams. I know that relievers are relievers and relievers are relievers. You've got to admit, I know you're an angel, you've got to admit, coming back from a compound fracture to win that way, isn't that like comeback player of the year already in the book? Just like Josh Naylor's name down?
It's a fine game. It's
an unprecedented game, you grumpy Grinch of a producer.
It's a terrific game. I'll give you that. There's 150 more of those, right? 145 more of those.
There are 150 more compound fracture comebacks out there.
Let's see what he's batting at the end of the
I
year
don't
to see
care
how
what he's batting at the end of the year. That's the comeback player of the year right there, Josh Naylor. And they thought his career was
in one
over.
game, he secures the comeback player of the entire year.
Yes. A compound fracture, and then you follow it up with a grand slam to tie and a 3-run dinger to win.
Trout's batting about 350 right now, and he missed most of last season because of an injury. You could say 350.
Boo.
You could say 350 is probably more
Cleveland
comeback player of the
Guardians,
year.
I've got your back, Josh Naylor. Congratulations.
The Cleveland
By the
what?
way,
What'd you call them?
The Cleveland Guardians. By the way, Tom Hamilton, you are the best voice in baseball. Go nowhere, America.
Check your blood pressure, by the way.
I bet you Bob Franz is going to spend his entire show in Cleveland on that today. And
He
Bruce
would,
Willie
wouldn't
in
he?
Columbus. He should. He should. That's never happened before, America. I'll be right back. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
To peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
Here's the second tweet that they said led to his permanent suspension. Quote, "To all of those who have asked, I will not be going to the inauguration on January 20th. He informed the country he wasn't going to attend Biden's inauguration. His prerogative, right? Did that incite violence? Why would you be violent if Trump didn't go to Biden's inauguration? Trust me, if you hate Trump, you didn't want Trump to go to Biden's inauguration. You were glad he didn't go." Now listen to this. This is from the Twitter. We assessed these two tweets under our glorification of violence policy, which aims to prevent the glorification of violence that could inspire others to replicate violent acts, and determined that they were highly likely to encourage and inspire people to replicate the criminal acts that took place at the Capitol on January 6th. I think Elon Musk took one look at that and said, "You're full of crap, and I'm buying your butts. I'm buying your fannies, and I'm going to show you how free speech works." And Trump needs to come back to Twitter. He has an obligation to go back to Twitter. Game, set, match. Because if you can explain or defend Twitter's permanent suspension of Donald Trump, you call me right now and we will put you to the top of the line. I promise. 1-800-655-MIKE. 800-655-6453. What a bunch of jerks.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now with Carl Jackson.
Sticking up for little kids, not wanting them to get groomed, not wanting them to be abused, and shame on them for intervening against us. But that's what they did. That's who they are on the side of the teachers' unions. So anyway, the Friedrichs fix was the unions went into the state houses that they control, the blue states, and they said, look, looks like this lawsuit's going to win and it's going to end forced unionism. We were all forced to pay unions as a condition of employment. Looks like they're going to win. So we got to pass all these fixes so that we don't lose all our people paying the unions. So what they did was, one of the fixes was that was passed in California, that every person who's in a union shop, their personal contact information is given to these government unions on a regular basis. I think it's 3 or 4 times a year, but nobody else can have their contact information. Another thing they did was they made it illegal for government employers to tell their employees their new rights, so that when they won the right to no longer pay these government unions, people don't know they have the right because their employer's not allowed to tell them. Another thing is the unions got the right to get 30 minutes with every new employee so they can harangue them and harass them and tell them all about how they need to join the union, but nobody else gets that time with those employees. And they do it on company dime, taxpayer dime, and company time. So it's just unbelievable. The unions pull all these tricks to make everything in their favor and to make it almost impossible for us to reach people with the truth that they no longer have to fund these unions. So that's why we made this movie, Whose Children Are They? That's why we started our group for Kids and Country, and I wrote a book, and we did all this just to educate people on, you don't have to pay these wicked unions anymore. And yes, they are wicked. I'll say it. What they're doing is wicked.
Keep up with what's trending on SalemNewsChannel.com.
How 1 million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Judge Thomas, do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Yesterday, President Biden signed the Ukraine Lend-Lease Act into law. That's a very good thing. But I read the Washington Post account today, and it did not note that Senator John Cornyn of Texas is the fella who came up with the idea back in January. We discussed it on air on January 13th. I'd been tipped by Roger Wicker of Mississippi that John Cornyn was out talking about reviving Lend-Lease, and it happened. But John Cornyn is a workhorse, not a show horse, so the senator from Texas is not out taking bows, and you should be, Senator. I welcome him this morning, and he didn't know I was going to begin that way, but welcome and congratulations, Senator.
Well, thanks. You know, there actually is a lot of good work being done around here. A lot of it doesn't get noticed because it's not really clickbait or something that the late night cable shows follow. But yeah, it's good progress, and I think in helping the Ukrainians defend themselves, it's a great indication of our staying power and of our will to support the Ukrainians. It was particularly gratifying, Hugh, to see President Zelensky tweet his appreciation for the Lend-Lease bill that was signed by the president.
Now, tell us, Senator, you're being modest again. Just give us how, there's that famous YouTube video, how a bill, I'm just a bill. How did this happen?
Schoolhouse Rock is what you're talking about.
Yes.
So, well, the way it happens is you come up with an idea, and here, of course, as you know, there was historical precedent in March of 1941 when the United States was not involved in World War II. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt signed the original Lend-Lease bill to help Britain and our allies in Europe who were hanging on by a thread against Nazi aggression. And so from that idea, I thought, well, it's fine to be able to provide the Ukrainians the weapons that they need. I just wish it had happened faster. But, of course, none of us knew the Ukrainians would hang on this long, and President Zelensky would inspire his nation and his people to defend themselves. So I think I reached out to people like Ben Cardin and Jean Shaheen, who Jean is on the Armed Services Committee. Ben's on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee because, of course, nothing happens around here without bipartisan support. They kind of liked the idea, and then we went to work. And thanks to Roger Wicker, who was
also part of that great group to start with. We just went from there. We passed it, of course, in the House, and then the Senate. It was in the Senate, and then the House, and got it to the president. That's the way you make a law.
It's remarkable that happened since you came up with the idea in January. Because I actually, other than continuing resolutions and stuff that has to pass because of, default and things like that, debt ceiling, I've never heard of an actual piece of legislation requiring a supermajority moving from January to May. That is significant. Do you recall one, Senator Cornyn?
Well, we're working on another one right now. It has to do with providing the Supreme Court law enforcement with the authority to provide protective details for the justices and their children and their families. It just passed the Senate unanimously last night, and we're hoping to get it through the House in the next couple of days. So, sometimes people have great ideas, but it's like they want to change Western civilization, and unfortunately, that takes a long time. And I think I've found that some of these rifle shots that make good progress in important areas are easier to do, and that's how we got it done.
Workhorse, not show horse. Now, Senator Cornyn, a different kind of rifle shot worries me. You served on the Texas Supreme Court. You also know that a nut tried to kill half the Republicans in Congress at a baseball field, not 3 miles from my home. And I am legitimately worried about justices and nuts. What in the world are your colleagues across the aisle saying about this?
Not very much. I mean, they seem to be encouraging the protest, and of course they think this is a great distraction leading up to the midterm elections. They don't want to talk about inflation. They don't want to talk about crime. They don't want to talk about the border. So they want to talk about abortion. And even though this individual, whoever he or she was, for the first time in the history of the country, leaked a draft opinion in a very important case and created this furor. But, of course, our Democratic colleagues are just stoking this because they think it will energize their base vote in the midterms. I think they're overreaching, as they usually do, and it will backfire. But that's my view.
Yeah, I think if Chuck Schumer introduces that bill today, unlimited abortion on demand, federalizing it, it will hurt every Democrat who votes for it because nobody wants that except the extreme. And it's not consistent with our federal approach, and supermajorities in America support reasonable restrictions on abortions. Is that what your study of the issue? I actually looked at the numbers from private polling. Supermajorities support reasonable restrictions on abortion.
That's exactly right. And if Senator Schumer wants the Senate to be on record on some of these issues, I'd like to have a vote on sex selection abortions, on late-term abortions like partial birth abortions, the infanticide, people resuscitating a baby after a failed abortion. I'd like to get senators on the record on that because I think what they're proposing in this bill is radical, and they need to be exposed for what they're trying to do.
It's a radical bill to play to their radical base who are now taking to the streets in front of justices' houses. I played the entire speech of Leader McConnell from the floor yesterday, and I wasn't sure, but now I am. There is a federal law that prohibits this. I know there's a Virginia law as well that prohibits it. Do you want to see the demonstrators outside of justices' houses arrested?
Well, if they're violating the law, I sure do. I think obviously, there's always this fine line between peaceful protests, but we saw a lot of unpeaceful protests that were called by the mainstream media peaceful. But justices should not be threatened with violence on their children, and certainly the protesters should not be trespassing on their property. But I agree with you. There are some fragile minds out there who could be incited to violence by some of this irresponsible pandering to the radical base of the Democratic Party. And I think that's the reason why we need to make sure the justices and their families at least have the same sort of protective details that are available to members of Congress under similar circumstances.
And I remind everyone, I was tweeting out against January 6th rioters even as they began to riot. Senator Cornyn was on that same page. There is a line that when you cross it, you ought to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. The Virginia and the federal law in this case is clear, just as the January 6th convicted are clear and should have been prosecuted. So there just isn't any disagreement here. First Amendment protects a lot. It doesn't protect violence or assault, which is the imminent threat. And there's a federal statute that protects justices and a Virginia statute that prohibits residential picketing. And I want them enforced. Senator, can we turn to a bigger issue now, which is the inflationary spiral that we are in? Mm-hmm. President Biden yesterday announced that billions of dollars, I think $14 billion of the infrastructure bill, is going to subsidize internet access via checks to people under twice the poverty level. Now, that might be a good idea or a bad idea, but I had no idea that was in the infrastructure bill. Did you?
Well, that was a big expensive bill, and the reason I didn't vote for it is because it was not responsibly paid for, which is what we were told it would be. But access to broadband is important. But the problem is, I've looked at this, Hugh, back in the 30s. You remember the rural electrification program during the New Deal, and of course that's how Lyndon Johnson made his chops as a young congressman in Texas in the 1930s. But it's the broadband issue is a lot more complicated. It's not just a question of subsidizing people who have a hard time affording it. It's actually providing the incentives for the internet companies to actually build out to some rural locations. Now, Elon Musk, I think, has a pretty exquisite answer to that, which is these small satellites and with his Starlink system, and maybe there'll be some more innovation there. But just sending people more free money is inflationary, and I think we need to be very careful about it, and the president seems to be clueless.
You brought up Elon Musk. I discussed in the first segment of this hour Elon Musk and the Russian threat against him with former National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. And first I made sure he didn't represent Elon Musk. And he says there's a duty of federal law enforcement to warn anyone against whom a credible threat of violence from a foreign government exists and to protect if necessary. And I'm sure Elon Musk has great security. But he's a patriot. He ought to get the Medal of Freedom for what he did in Ukraine, which is keep him online when the Russians were trying to black ops them out of existence. What do you think of what Musk did for Ukraine?
I think it was inspired, and the guy is just continues to surprise and amaze me. I know he's more of a libertarian and not a conservative like you and me in that sense, but I think stepping up to help the people of Ukraine stay in touch with the rest of the world and expose these atrocities handed down by Russians in Ukraine was inspired, and I'm happy that he did it. But obviously, that's only part of the story. I wish we were doing a better job of getting the message out to the Russian people in Russia, because unfortunately, Putin's propaganda machine is working overtime, and they are unfortunately looks like supporting this invasion.
Now, I want to close by going back to the Supreme Court justices who have been threatened, Senator Cornyn. You served on the Texas Supreme Court, and unfortunately, we know of district court judges and state court judges who've been murdered by defendants in their court and people seeking revenge. We know of threats against everybody in public life, but I've never seen anything like this. Did you ever have the entire court threatened when you were on the Texas Supreme Court?
Not so much. Maybe just on rare occasion, but no real credible threats that I can think of. But the problem, most of the time judges are pretty anonymous. It's not like elected officials who have to campaign for office, and so. But unfortunately, when Chuck Schumer goes over the steps of the Supreme Court and calls out Justices Gorsuch and Kavanaugh by name and says you won't know what's hit you, and that sort of rhetoric, obviously that's something very different, because then these become very visible, and some twisted person with a grievance embraces that and then commits acts of violence like the one you mentioned against the congressional baseball team close to your house just a few years ago when Steve Scalise was nearly killed.
Senator, every time I think Chuck Schumer has hit the floor, he finds a way to fall off of it. Thank you for joining me. Congratulations on the Lend-Lease Act becoming law. I know who started it. It was you, and I appreciate your joining me this morning, Senator.
Hugh, take care.
Take care. ReliefFactor.com. It will keep you in whatever game you play today or tomorrow or this weekend. And I keep telling people, last week I was complaining because it's been a year and a half since my neck started to go bad, and it just really went bad. And I was complaining last week. And then I bought my grandson's pillow from him because it was an inch and a quarter thick, and I tried it. It worked. And I also had doubled up on ReliefFactor.com. I'm still going to go see the orthopedic surgeon because my GP wants me to do that because it's weird. And ReliefFactor.com, though, I doubled down on the dose that I take. I don't know if it's a pillow or ReliefFactor.com or a combo, but I'm pain-free this morning. I am. And that, you heard me last week. I really could not move. And now I think it's the combo. Or maybe it was Genghis Kate. I don't know. But ReliefFactor.com, give it a try. $19.95. I'll be right back, America. It's a 3-week starter pack. I'll be right back. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Connection to me, Hugh Hewitt.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you make the internet safe, then you make the system safer for everyone. Big tech puts black people, black is of course capitalized, people of color, I'm shocked that that's not capitalized, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else. Really? Big tech puts black people, so big tech, which allows constantly for the degradation of people with white skin, but they're putting black people, people of color, that's obviously non-black, non-whites, women, queer and disabled people in more danger than anyone else.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Judge Thomas, you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
I was under constant attack. You're not really black because you're not doing what we expect black people to do. This is the wrong black guy. He has to be destroyed.
So you'd still like to serve on the Supreme Court?
I'd rather die than withdraw from the process.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
They're not objective. Edward R. Murrow.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I want to remind you, a great sponsor of our show, AndrewandTodd.com. They lend money. There was Sierra Pacific Mortgage. I normally talk about them in the second segment of every hour, but I waited today because I had to cover Josh Naylor's incredible performance. I mean, really, a record-breaking performance in Chicago last night. He hit a grand slam to tie the ball game in the ninth, and then he hit a 3-run home run in the 11th to win it for the Guardians. And Josh Naylor was lying with a compound fracture in the outfield late last summer, and I and a lot of people wondered if the young outfielder who came from the Padres to the then Indians and now Guardians would ever play baseball again. And so my hat is off to you, Josh Naylor, and all of Cleveland is just cheering you, and Guardians fans everywhere like me are cheering you. Well done. AndrewandTodd.com, though, do deserve their time, and especially given where interest rates are. Now, I think interest rates dropped yesterday because the market sold off again. Let me check. The 10-year Treasury is down to 3.079. That means your 30-year fix is probably going to be in the 5%. But you got to move now because it's just going to keep going up and up and up. We've down this road before. This is when Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I bought our first house in 1985 in anticipation of our first baby who's about to have her fourth. And we had to pay 12.5% for our 30-year fix for our first little townhouse. And I want to tell you, if you're about to buy your first little townhouse, go to andrewandtodd.com, or maybe you're going to move up in the market, and the market may have slowed down a little bit. I don't think so. I still think it's like 10 offers for every house out there. Get a pre-qualification letter, lock in your rate, call Andrew and Todd at 888-888-1172. They're the best there. I've known Andrew Del Rey for 25 years. I've known Todd Abakian for a decade. They're my friends. They've done all our loans. They've done the loans of the people on the team. They will do your loan because they're a lender with Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They actually lend you the money. They underwrite the loan. They help you. AndrewandTodd.com. To the phones very quickly. Let's go to Fred in Chicago. Hi, Fred. You're on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hugh, good morning. It's a pleasure. I wholeheartedly agree with you that the opinion needs to be released today, or at least the judgment does. And I say that I'll use 3 events in reverse order to explain why. Number 1, there was a Georgetown law professor this weekend named Josh Chaffetz who stated that the only difference between the mob on January 6th and the current mob is that the current mob is right. This is a law professor. For God's sake, people of that ilk are losing their minds. Number 2, a few weeks ago, a gentleman set himself on fire in front of the Supreme Court over concerns about environmental issues. That is how passionately and deranged some people are about litigation. And number 3, you mentioned the baseball incident, but a couple years ago, I'll mention one that happened closer to the federal judiciary. A maniac, a monster, who was upset with a federal judge, went to her home, Judge Esther Salas of the District of New Jersey, to kill her. He wound up killing her son. He seriously injured her husband.
I'd forgotten that. You're right.
Yes, and the only reason he didn't kill her was because they fought and they scared this coward, and he ran off after he had attacked them. And that's the only reason she wasn't killed. There are maniacs out there. I am gravely concerned for the safety of these justices, and I think that they need to stay securely fortified until this opinion is released. I was very worried when I saw that Justice Thomas went to the 11th Circuit Conference. I don't think he should have done that. I think that Justice Alito's approach is correct. He's apparently gone into hiding with his family, and it is monumentally frightening the times we're living in.
The judgment should issue, opinions to follow. Because, some people might not be done, and they might have been, the dissenters might not be done. Justice Breyer's last opinion is going to be a dissent in the Dobbs case. That's fine. Judgment, issue, opinions to follow. So that it's a fait accompli then, and the crazy people might go home, although they have been whipped up to such a frenzy that the threat will continue for a long time. Fred, thank you. David in Houston. Hi, David.
So, Hugh, I had basically the same. My question is, and Senator Cornyn's my senator, and I'm glad. But so you ask, why isn't that, or do you believe that should be enforced? And it was a little bit of obfuscation, and I'm just curious.
I'll tell you why. It's never been enforced against a demonstration about the court. And so there are some First Amendment concerns. I'd have to read the law, and we would have to know the facts and circumstance of the violation. The Virginia statute has also not been approved, and so he's a justice of the Texas Supreme Court alum. He's not going to render a verdict without knowing exactly what are the facts that are being prosecuted against exactly the defendant. But generally, those laws are on the books, and if they are broken, they ought to be enforced. How's that, David?
Right. That's true.
Right.
And as Hugh Hewitt says, what gets rewarded gets repeated. So
yes, that which gets rewarded gets repeated. And I'm just really afraid. The lunatic number in this country is not insignificant. So pray for the justices and their family. Pray for the diseased of mind. Our First Amendment right is healthy and alive. Go out and picket the Supreme Court all you want. Pro-choice or pro-abortion rights demonstrators. Yell as loud as you want. Scream. Do not go to homes and attempt to intimidate justices. I think that violates Virginia law and federal law. We shall see. I'll be back tomorrow, America, with more of the news. I got Congressman Mike Gallagher, Senators Tom Cotton and Dan Sullivan to talk about the war in Ukraine and everything else that happens between now and then and the next Hugh Hewitt Show.